Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from ZooBox, and today I'm going to be doing a little solo ZooBox Goes to the Library. So when I was growing up, and even to this day, one of my favorite stories is Beowulf, especially this translation. This is probably the premier translation. Seamus Heaney even won a Nobel Prize for it in 1995. But it's been something that stayed with me forever. I first encountered it in high school and just quickly fell in love with it. Kind of started reading it every couple of years ever since then. I've watched every movie adaptation, and I'm still waiting for the right one. I'm still waiting for the right one. But I'll make apologies for that Zemeckis thing. I'll make apologies for it, even though it kind of deviates a little bit. But I think there's actually a video on this channel. I think you could go check that review out. I think if you look up Beowulf in our videos, you'll find it. But anyways, I was just loved that story from a very young age. In our house, we are voracious readers, and we have a couple little kids, a few children. I have a 6-year-old son, and we read a ton. I read a lot of books to him and with him. You know, we're working through all the Goosebumps. We've read the Captain Underpants series, what feels like 1,000 times. And we're always looking for something new. So today we were just kind of without agenda, browsing the library, just looking for cool stuff, and I just happened to stumble across this Beowulf in the kids section, and I was immediately intrigued, so I picked it up and I kind of looked at it. Part of me wanted to not like it a little bit because I was like, oh no, is this going to be like some kind of shitty, like wokeified, kind of postmodern deconstruction of Beowulf done in this kind of cutesy fashion that masquerades as a children's book, but is really for Arrested Development adults. One of the warning signs was that Neil Gaiman gave his seal of approval to the book. So I rented it though, or we took it out, we borrowed it from the library because I was like, well, why not just read it for ourselves and see. Because then I also opened it up and I saw that it had, well, it's a little cutesy and stuff, some admittedly very cool artwork. Like, it's really cool stuff. And then once we started reading it, we read it tonight, and I didn't anticipate reading the whole thing because it's about 200 pages. And even 200 pages of a comic book or something that is comic book-esque is a lot, So it ended up taking us about a little over an hour, I think, to get through the whole thing. I was very pleasantly surprised by what I found. I found something that was way more thoughtful, way more clever, a very clever adaptation of Beowulf that kind of reduces it down to its fundamentals without losing the spirit of the story and also kind of making a great point. I thought maybe the fact that they kind of gender swapped Beowulf, that would be something that would be noticeable, but not really. I think he gets away with it because these are children. The oldest person in the book is like 7 years old, or of like the main characters. Part of the book is the kind of a kids versus adult mentality, as it kind of shifts the perspective of who the monsters are and why the monsters do what they want to do. Like, in the story, the Scandinavian epic poem there, Beowulf has to come save this kingdom from Grendel because of all the partying at Herat. The parties are too loud, and Grendel finds them and comes and attacks the Herat. Well, they have something like that in this, where it's like a kid builds a tree house called Tree Heart in his backyard, where all the kids come over and they eat nothing but candy and drink caffeinated sodas and play mature-rated video games that are too much, that should be too much for them, things that their parents don't like them doing. It's kind of like this children's kingdom, this paradise that they live in. And it's like very cleverly adapting those things. And the Grendel, which is, I think Grendel in this book, that's one of the names it goes by. So it does like kind of the epic poem thing where it like names 50 different names for every character in the story. He's just like kind of a grumpy dude that lives next door that's annoyed by the kids playing. And one of the cooler things in the book is the kind of the way it's written. One of the things I enjoyed the most about it is it pays direct homage to something like this, like the way it's written, the epic poem style. And I'll just read a little bit here, just to kind of give you a taste, some flavor of it. Shadow shielded kids, shapeless forms, ducking and dashing, dodging sky drones. Deer were confused. Heidi led them, last in line, lifting the weak. For hours they thwarted fate. Then dawn came. Heidi turned back to bear the blame blast behind her. The earth burst a black hole, a boy within. Kai, cardboard-crowned Kid King, sang, "Come into the tunnels crafted by Carl long ago." And it's just like stuff like that. And it adds like a really fun, unique flavor to it. And one of the cool things about it, just the experience of reading it to my son earlier, which kind of inspired me to sit down and talk about it. Because normally on this channel, like I wouldn't talk about a children's book, right? Is that it evoked a lot of fun conversation with my son, and we talked about the language, and we talked about the word use. And when he could see like the language put in, in relation to the pictures, it makes it all come to life. It makes it all come to life, and he could follow the story. I mean, my son's 6 years old. He's a pretty smart 6-year-old too. Like, he's a pretty sharp kid. I don't just say that because he's my kid, but he is. He could follow the story in relation to the pictures and the words, and it reminded me a lot of in the way that I think, in high school, oftentimes I think they treat Shakespeare poorly because Shakespeare is meant to be seen, watched, not really read. At least not at first dalliance, right? Like, you should be watching Shakespeare plays before you're reading Shakespeare plays and studying Shakespeare plays. So it kind of had that same effect, and I was kind of I was taken aback by how much of it he could understand and articulate and engage with. Because when I was reading it, I was like, well, I find this pretty clever. Like, I find this pretty funny. I wonder what he's getting out of it. And he was totally sucked in. We were sitting on the beanbag in his room, and just kind of huddled together. Like, it took like about an hour, a little over an hour to read the whole thing, and his attention was kept the entire time, which, let me tell you, keeping a 6-year-old's attention for any more than about 45 seconds is impressive. And he was totally into it. He had a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to reading the next part, because they took the second half of the story, which would be Grendel's mother, and then Beowulf going home and growing old and fighting the dragon. They lopped that off, and it looks like they're going to adapt that in a second one. I looked, this just came out this year, so I'm not sure when the next part will come out, but I will definitely be interested. This was really cool. I would go, if you have a local library or something like that, either go check it out or request it. I don't know anything about these writers. Like I said, this was totally a blind pickup, but I thought they did a great job writing, adapting. The artwork is a lot of fun. It's really cool. It's kind of like, because it's pretty hardcore, but at the same time, it's very playful and safe. But it has an edge to it, which I really like. With kids stuff, I think it's okay for kids to engage with things that are like a little bit scary sometimes. Now, I don't know if everybody's 6-year-old would be into this. Like I said, when I was kind of reading through, maybe for the first 10 minutes or so, I was like, oh, I don't know how engaging this is for him. Maybe he's not really, maybe he's just being a cool kid and just like hanging out with his dad, and he doesn't really care about the story. But then I kind of started asking questions. We started talking about what was happening in the story, and he was totally into it. So I don't know, I would give it a whirl. Even if you're an adult, and if you're just a fan of Beowulf, it's a fun book, man. It's a fun book. I wouldn't have read it like if I didn't have kids. I could say that for sure. Probably never would have come across it. And maybe that's my own ignorance. Maybe that's my own bubble that I live in or exist in. But yeah, very pleasantly surprised by Beowulf by Weinersmith and BEA. I'm sure they're probably like super famous writers that I know about. And I'm just not putting the names together with who they are. Or maybe not. Maybe they're newcomers. Who knows? Who can say? Well, anyways, that's going to do it for me. I'm Shaun, and I'll talk to you later. Adios.